moment, breaking the house.
Breaking eye.
And then should I hit it when I'm done, or is that?
Yeah, if you unplug it, it's fine. It will just do the same thing. But hitting it when you're done is the more proper way of doing it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Welcome in.
Is that 4 kittens on your t-shirt?
Yep.
Is that a 4 kitchens t-shirt?
Uh-huh.
It
I
is.
got it from Todd last, at Atlanta last year.
Love it.
And it's an agency. Well, not really promotion, no, just cut it. Do it. Pardon me?
Carol, is that you now? She used to work that time? She's got closing the door. You're very much like a teacher right now.
Right.
You're-
I think that's the idea.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
How are we doing? Woo! All right. Was not expecting a woo. Pleasant surprise. Welcome to From Conversation to Code. We're talking about an exercise that helps us to gather requirements in a collaborative way and then to turn them into automated tests that you can use for ensuring that your features all work as they should. Everyone in the right place? My name is Jess Constantine. I'm an engineer and technical architect at Palantir.net. Been working there for about 8 years. I live in southwestern Utah, so I went from dry heat to humid heat this past weekend. And I moved there shortly after my first time presenting at Drupal Camp Florida, which was in 2020. I love helping good people do good work. My sort of passion about Drupal is integrating Drupal with other sort of technology in fun ways. And then more recently, sort of digging into the processes that help teams build the right thing. So kind of what we'll be talking about today. Also, this is, I think, a lost art now that we've got AI writing code, but turning like spaghetti code into beautiful self-documented code is like a zen for me, but I don't think we'll get to do it anymore. And I love German. But enough about me. Tell me about you. Who do we have in the room? Are folks raising if you're sort of on the tech side of things? You're a developer or an engineer? Yeah, okay. How about a designer, UX? Okay. Strategy, content, a little bit. That's okay. How about products, sort of business value? Yeah, a little product owner. Okay. So we got sort of everything covered. Anyone have experience with the exercise that we're talking about, example mapping? Has anyone done it? Cool. So the problem space that example mapping sort of looks to solve is this sort of gap in requirements. And so I'm guessing from the way that you raised your hand as the majority of your sort of technical folks, some of the pain points that make you experience are things like I have to either read or write this super long like requirements document, right? This brief of things, and I have to sort of maintain that. Or maybe I have to sort of figure out what the right thing to build is from a conversation that maybe someone else had, maybe a product owner had, or people who did discovery had. Or maybe I get a ticket to implement and the acceptance criteria is like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or I don't know how to know if I finished this, or even what the scope is. And then at the very end, how to actually test the thing that you built matches some document or some ticket, right? Like there's this very large gap in requirements. Does that sound familiar? Does anyone have something to add to this list? This is a pain point around sort of thinking through requirements and then sort of matching what I'm building or what I'm testing to those requirements? What's missing? Yeah, we got it.
I don't know if this falls under the same bucket, but like something that I've seen is where developers feel like I've checked the box, but you haven't really solved the like business problem.
Yeah. Well, I did what's in the ticket, right? But then the person that's sort of you're delivering the value to is like, that's not actually what I wanted.
Or need, right?
Yeah, it's not what I mean. It's not serving the purpose. Yeah.
That's what you wrote down.
Yeah. Yeah. Or how I interpreted what you wrote down, right? Yeah. Or if it's not written down, it's the assumption that I made because that's how I did it 2 years ago on this other project and then similar, right? So that's, yeah, all sorts of things. That last one is actually one that probably should be on this list. It's, we can either talk about how the thing that I built worked and how maybe it doesn't work how you wanted it to, like after I've already built it, and then we can go back and iterate, or we can just figure it out beforehand, and then I'll build it the right way. Either way, like I'm gonna make assumptions, or I'm gonna do it the way that I know that you want it. So instead of having this gap in requirements, the goal is that we sort of have this alignment, so that we write our requirements in a plain language that everyone can understand, right? So our stakeholders who aren't technical, our designers who think about the users, our strategists who think about content or people editing content, and the developers. And it comes from collaboration. It comes early in the process, not after I've already built something to fix it in retrospect. And we wanted to actually use it to say, from that, this is sort of the holy grail. And this is like, it's always been my dream that like, we do discovery, we think about, we scope this feature, and here are the requirements, here's how it works, and now I'm gonna give these to you so that you can build it. And then after the sprint when you build it, I just take the same thing, I say, here's what I demo, and then when I demo, it's like, okay, now you see if this actually built the thing that you talked about a month ago or 4 weeks ago, right? And like, it's just the same requirements all the way through. And so it's a shared confidence. And that becomes your automated test too, so then every other thing that you build, right, gets tested against this. And it just makes sure that you're actually building what folks want, that you're delivering the actual value. So what it looks like is an exercise. It's called example mapping. It's a workshop, so it's an actual meet call if you're remote, or you can be in the same room with a whiteboard. And it's highly collaborative. And the idea is that you explore a user story, so it's good to do it around the sort of scope of that sort of level of, as a person, I want to do this thing so that the value happens. And you explore that user story through concrete examples using real data. So having someone there that has that context is going to be helpful. And you surface the rules of that example. And we'll talk about that in a second, but the rules are like the very most simple part of acceptance criteria, right? It's a check-offable statement. This thing either happens or it doesn't happen as I'm testing this thing that you built. And then you surface your assumptions and questions. Super important to do that when you can. So those are the sort of pieces, the ingredients of example mapping. Does anyone have any questions? Or does it look like maybe something could be missing or surprising from that list? Or we can jump right in. So who should participate in this collaborative conversation? If you read about this, it's a part of gathering requirements for something called behavior-driven development. And what they'll say is, oh, this should be the three amigos: the product owner or the stakeholder, someone who knows about the business, the developer, someone who's going to build it, and then a QA engineer, someone who will test it. Raise your hand if you've been on a team that has a QA engineer. Good for you. I was like, this feels like this is a unicorn to me, right? Like this is a luxury. I've never actually had that. So for when we use this on teams that I'm a part of, this is usually more what it looks like. It's definitely more than 3 people for us, but it doesn't have to be. I think it has to just have the perspectives have to be there, right? So you could have other folks there and say, you wear the hat of this person or this perspective. But we try to have someone from the business. Sometimes we have internal product owners who sort of relay what they've learned from the stakeholders on the other side. We still have someone who's going to build it. We try to really represent the perspective of the user, so the UX or a designer. So they're not only the perspective of the user, but also to sort of champion whatever the design system that's there, right, to keep things sort of in check. And then anytime you can get folks who know the domain, who know content, or accessibility, depending on what you're building, like we just welcome them to come and provide their perspective, to sort of ask questions or talk about assumptions. They feel like the more you can have, the better. Does it look like anyone's missing here from teams that you've been on? Or do you see yourself in one of these circles on the screen this Sunday morning? There's a question.
I was just going to comment, I feel like that sort of dotted circle, oftentimes I've seen the product manager kind of fill that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. That can work. All right, so we've got what, we've got who, when. So what's worked well for me is that if you think about this sort of workflow that kind of a bundle of work might go through, so like a user story or a bunch of features might go through, it's helpful to have some sort of high-level product sort of mapping of user stories. So you know, like what's the scope of this whole thing that we're building, right? Not just this feature. But then you sort of dive in one level to that user story. And our UX folks will do like a sketch session, which is kind of like just talking about what the behavior or the flow might be for the feature that you're building. So it's not necessarily a design, it's not a prototype, it's just like maybe a mirror or something like that. It's even before wireframes. And then doing the actual wireframe just to sort of get an idea of the data and the layout, what's important. This is sort of the sweet spot for us is where example mapping happens. So kind of after we've done this discovery work, and then before you start to actually build it with your prototyping and what you might do in Drupal and testing and things like that. But what's helpful is that you then have some sort of low fidelity visual reference to just help people sort of understand, I can see this thing that we've been talking about so far. And when you have your UX folks participate in the exercise, they start to think about using the words like, oh, rules and examples, because then they might say, add an annotation to their wireframe that says, oh, here's a rule about this kind of content, right? This is something that the user can configure and edit themselves, or this is automated, it comes from the database or something like that. Any questions? So kind of before or after the UX sort of work happens is sort of the early discovery, but before you start to build it. Yeah.
If you were in a process that was doing like user testing, even like less formal user testing, would you see that as happening further down the line, like maybe even after prototyping? Because I feel like some people will user test even at like the wireframe stage. So would that be before the example mapping?
That's a great question. I mean, you could do, so like usually you see iterations in here, right? You could, if you wanted to test the rules to see if that makes sense, then you could do a small iteration here like you're saying, right? If you wanted to user test at this point. I think that could work for sure. I feel like we tend to do it kind of really early in this phase, but I think it depends maybe on what you want to test and what you want to learn. It's a great question. Try it that way and let me know how it goes. Any other questions? All right, well, let's jump in and see an example of example mapping. So I've got a little Miro board. Folks, I'm sure are familiar with Miro. I'm just going to sort of walk you through a template, and then after we sort of get the pieces and how it works, I'll jump down to an example of one that we sort of filled out. So as we mentioned, the pieces here are that there's a user story, and it's literally a yellow sticky. There should probably only be one of those. And since we've done this sort of after the sort of wireframing and UX sketching, we typically know what this is. So like you might come to the call having already filled this out or one or two of those, and you just sort of, it's more a validation and then a let's figure out the thing that we're doing. So we tend to know that before we jump into this call. And then down here, the blue sticky, you'll end up having sort of a row of these and that's where you would write your rule. And the rule could be if you were building a login screen and you're talking about a password, right? The password must have so many letters, 6 of them are uppercase, strict rule, but no special characters in that. So it's something that you can check to say yes or no. And then for us, we also use this as sort of a priority. So once you have sort of a group of the rules, you can then sort of think about, okay, what's the most important one for us to sort of start diving into? And you just sort of order those. So priority decreases as you go to the right. And then you've got the examples. So using actual real data to either validate or invalidate the rule. So if we're building a contact directory for local businesses that are in counties, and we're sorting them, and I click on A, I should only see organizations or businesses that start with A, right? And so then you would list what some of those actually are. So that's the bulk, that's the sort of meat of this. But what happens as you start to sort of dig into those is that you might have questions. So you uncover some unknowns. And then the other important thing is, for this rule to be able to be true, this is an assumption I'm making about our architecture or the content or the data. It's really helpful to sort of flag those. And then down here in the bottom left, we tend to put a little visual from that sort of sketch session or the wireframe, just to sort of surface for folks like this is the area that we're talking about. And I'll show you what that looks like down below. And then from this exercise, you can kind of draw some insights. So if you've got a table covered in red questions, that probably means we've got a lot to sort of think about with this story or with this feature. So maybe it's not ready yet. Maybe we have to answer these questions. Maybe we're going to be blocked when we want to start doing this work. If you've got too many blue, maybe that means that we need to sort of narrow the scope of this thing that we're talking about. Maybe we can slice it somehow. And if you start to have too many examples, too many green stickies for one of them, same thing. Maybe this one rule is too big and we need to think about how we can split this up. So just some things to sort of keep in mind. And this is a Miro template. I'm happy to share it with folks if you use that so that you can try it out. Any questions about sort of the pieces? All right, let's dig into one. So here's a little wireframe. It's a directory by county. So I mentioned that it kind of comes after you've done some of the UX discovery, but not before you've built the prototype. And depending on where your sort of product is in its maturity, you might know what your design system is. So like this wireframe is kind of high fidelity, right? Like we've got kind of some UI indicators here, like, oh, these are some links. That's not necessary though. This example or this example mapping is about the behavior of the user, like the thing that they can do, but it's not about the way that they interact. It's not about the interface, so you don't have to know those things. You don't have to know if this is going to be a drop down or a list of links. You don't have to be using cards. So this is just something that you might have where you are. So we do have a sort of table of contents here of links. And when you click on one of these, you get sort of the letter, and then you get the counties that start with that letter. And then you get a list of, these are resource centers, basically. So that's kind of the idea that we're doing with this example. And then above that, we just want folks to know, okay, we're not talking about the fact that you can have it by county or you can have it by tribal nation. So that part's out of scope for this exercise. And we're not talking about any of the content that goes above this, and we're not talking about this little sidebar feature where you can have the user actually select their county, right? That's all out of scope for this. This is literally just how we've got a directory where you can click on a letter, and then what you see when you click on that letter. And so the way that we define that user story is as a person who needs ADRC assistance in Wisconsin, I want to browse ADRC contact information by county easily so that I know the available options for getting help, right? So it's just that contact. And then I'll zoom out so you can see sort of what it looks like at the end. You can see we've got kind of a long list of blue rules. And then we've got a couple questions here, and we've got an assumption, and then we've got some actual examples of data. We also added a link to where folks could actually go and get the real data. Because that's important, right? Like using actual data so that you can have what you're developing against, like represent what's actually going to be live on the site, right? So having someone who knows where to get that, or having them there present is super, super helpful. We also started to sort of group, you can see these little headings. As we sorted them, we were like, okay, let's think about the logical grouping for some of these. So we've got list ordering and navigation, we've got contact content and fields, we've got result interaction and links, and then some sort of unrepresented stuff over there, some sort of more miscellaneous stuff. But some of the rules, the first rule that we have here is that the list of contacts appears in alphabetical order. So on page A, we should see Adams County before Ashland County. So those are two counties that are in Wisconsin. Seems super simple, right? It's not about how complex, right? It's about making it super simple so that I can have a test that does this. And I can have a test that says, all right, we have to make sure that our data represents Adams County and Ashland County. If one of these locations serves multiple counties, the result on that page should reflect the county that starts with the active letter. So the ADRC of Adams, Green Lake, and Washara County, it serves 3 different counties. It should appear under A for Adams County, G for Green Lake, and W for Washara, right? So it's just understanding where it's presented there. Each county displays its local ADRC, even if it appears on that page within multiple counties. So we talked about different letters, but even if it appears twice on the same letter, it should still appear there, because that's what they want. That's what the business owner wants, right? So, see the pattern there? Pretty like simple, check-offable statement backed up with real data. If you Google this exercise, you'll see a couple of different ways of writing the examples. I think it's important to really have this be a binary statement. The example sometimes I see you could use given, when, then. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Gherkin syntax. So sometimes we'll do that. So we start with when here. Sometimes I say, I don't know if anyone's watched Friends, but the episodes of Friends all start with the one with. And so some people say, oh, just start with the one with. I haven't tried that yet. And then I think this is pre-Gherkin for us, but now I think when you see our examples, they're mostly like given, when, then. Or the given might be applicable to sort of all of the rules, but it's the sort of when and then. Any questions? Seems straightforward?
Lots of things seem straightforward when you say them out loud.
Sure. Sure.
But until you do articulate them, you're running around in circles, right?
And I think that's exactly the value of this exercise too, right? Is that you think, oh, we're just building this contact directory, right? You've got a list of counties, applicable things, right? But then when you get into this, it's like, well, wait a minute. This one has 3 different counties, or this one has 2 counties, and they're on the same page. Like, what do you want to do about that? Because as a developer, I could say, oh, we only want it once on the page, right? But they're like, no, we want it twice. So it's like, if you don't talk about that, I build it how I want to build it, how it makes sense to me, and then you tell me it's wrong. Those things start to add up, right? That QA sprint at the end of the project, right? So let's look, we've got a question here. Is there ever more than one ADRC in a single county? We learned that, so we crossed that one out. And then we've got an assumption here. All ADRCs welcome walk-ins for the duration of their open hours. And that's around this rule that hours for an ADRC must be able to include information on walk-ins in addition to times. So the example is that the ADRC of the North must show Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., but then also that walk-ins are welcome. So it should indicate that part too. But you're exactly right. So this, depending on who's in the room, sometimes we'll also have folks review the wireframe, because if your UX folks sort of understand this concept of rules and examples, and they start to annotate even that list of things that you see, like, oh, these are some of the rules that we already pulled out. We already know these rules because we talked about them when we were doing our UX sketch, or when you reviewed the wireframe. So you could start with some of these pre-populated. We've also started with an empty slate and spent the first 10 minutes and said, let's just brainstorm. Let's have everyone sort of write down what they think. And then This part can come later sometimes. So it just depends on how much time you have, how you want to time box it. This probably took us an hour, or probably 2 one-hour sessions, which is a lot. I think we did this sort of early on. I think if we had pre-populated, that might have saved us some time, right? Like it's easier to sort of validate or invalidate your assumption than it is to sort of think from a blank slate, right? So that's sort of a tip if you want to try this exercise. Okay, so the second part of this, right, this is from conversation to code. So are folks familiar with behavior-driven development as a practice? That's something that folks practice. Maybe a little bit. So that's awesome that you're not. That's cool. So the idea here is that we've talked about the way this thing is supposed to behave, right? The content that the user is supposed to see, and when they're supposed to see it, when they're not supposed to see it. And if your examples have real data, and if you understand the background that's required, so the given part, and then also you understand what's supposed to happen, or the trigger of what's supposed to happen, and then the outcome. Those are the 3 pieces of behavior-driven development, or the sort of the test that you might write. So behavior-driven development itself, it focuses on collaboration. It focuses on having some kind of spec. So you write out behaviors that you're building, and you write them out as plain language. They're called scenarios. So one user story might have multiple scenarios, and I'll show you an example. And it should be something that stakeholders can read and that stakeholders can validate. It also, from a development perspective, it's literally the language that you can use for your automated tests to make sure that your scenarios guide your implementation and then verify against sort of spec that you've defined together. So it's collaborative. It should be clear. It should be plain language. It should be something that you can use literally to run tests to verify behaviors. And so we'll jump over now to a different part of this. So right over to the right, this is the actual translation. Actually, what I did was I took a screenshot of the Miro and I fed it into a little bit of AI. So this is the output. This is the artifact of our example mapping. Can you write a Behat scenario for us, or a Behat feature file for us? And this is what it came up with. And so the way that this works, if I say Behat, have folks heard of that before? It's sort of a way of, in a Drupal code base, others too, but we use it in Drupal code bases for having a very plain language file. So you can see the words, I think they're not technical, right? It is code, but it doesn't look like it's code. It's sentences that folks can understand. It translates that into some technical process that happens. Then you can say, does this thing happen or does it not happen, right? Just like a rule, does this thing happen or does this not happen? And so the structure of this, I'm sorry if it's a little hard to read here, is that we've got a feature over the top, and this is literally just the text of that yellow sticky, that user story that we had. It's the same thing, same words. And then we've got one background task, which is that given I am on the ADRC contact directory page. And so that's just the same given that we use for many of these. Because that's the page that we scoped, right? That little screenshot in the bottom left-hand corner. And so the way that this Behat sort of testing engine works is that you write this plain language statement. When you use these special keywords, the software knows what to do with that. It knows what that means. It doesn't always know, given I'm on the ADRC contact directory page, like what is that, right? But if you hand this to a developer who's working with it, they can either write this in an actual syntax that Behat already knows about. So it could be, given I browse to /ADRC/contact directory in a string, then Behat actually doesn't know what to do with that, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect yet at this point. Someone might know how to translate this into what it needs to be. And if they don't, there's another layer to this that we'll talk about in a second. So we've got a feature, we've got a background, and now we're going to sort of start to narrow the scope. So the first scenario is that contacts appear in alphabetical order by county. So that was that first rule that we had, right? That's our scenario. So when I view the contact listing for letter A, then I should see Adams County before Ashland County. And that was the rule below it, right? So we've got the rule, sorry, the example below here. So it's the scenario is the rule, and then the then is usually part of the example. And so for this part, you might be thinking the same thing. Like, well, how does this turn into executable code? So there's a little bit of a hidden layer to Behat called a context. So it's a PHP file, and that when you run this, without having that PHP there, the first time you run it, Behat will be like, oh, hey, when I do the contact listing for letter A, you got to tell me what that means. So you have to write some PHP code that says, oh, this is what I mean by that. So, and it could be telling the browser to go to this page, or finding the little A and clicking that in the browser, right? So you actually execute a little bit of interaction there. And the next scenario is that an ADRC serving multiple counties appears under each county. So this is that one that we said, oh, there's Adams, Green Lake, and Lashara. So when I view A, I should see Adams, Green Lake, and Lashara, because that's the name of the ADRC for Adams County. When I go to G, I should see that same thing under Green Lake. And when I go to W, same thing under W. So it's a literal translation of the scenario being the rule, and then the given one then being from the examples. Is that sort of connection clear? Would it be helpful to go back and see the stickies?
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense? Do you want to keep going to see some of the rest of the scenarios, or is that good?
I think it's good.
Good? Yeah. What do you got? What are your questions? Does anyone have a feature that, it looks like we've got about maybe 15 minutes. So if you have a question, let me know. If you don't have a question, we could try an actual example if you want to. So I'll leave that up to you.
Just a quick question then. It seems like the output of this then is a series of tests. Or I assume you guys are following like test-driven development then in terms of like how that's actually implemented?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Great point. So I have these series of files that sort of define the spec, the functionality of the user story that we're building. What you can then do with that is, this might be a lot to do in one ticket, right? Like, I don't know how your work is sort of organized, but sometimes it's by user story and then tasks for each of those user stories. But once you have this, even if it's not executable yet, but you have these words, that could be enough to have a developer say, okay, you're going to focus on the first 3 scenarios. So you could just indicate that, or you can copy and paste them into the ticket, and then as you're saying, like, then as a developer, I know, okay, I need to do just enough work to get these 3 scenarios to pass, and that's it, right? And so that is actually the DD part of BDD, right? That's the driven development part. So you know that I'm starting from a requirement that's technical, and when I start it, if I run this test, it's going to fail, because I haven't built the thing yet. And then I'm just going to do my development to get these things to pass, and that's it. So it's a really sort of helpful way of scoping the work that I need to do. And wouldn't that be awesome? You know, that's like, just tell me, how do I know it's done, right? Doesn't that sound like kind of amazing? Yeah, does that kind of answer your question? Thank you for asking. Anyone else? Then we have an idea for a thing that they're building or working on that we want to try and put through the test, put through the exercise. We probably won't get the Gherkin in, but we could practice the conversation part.
The first session after the
Right.
night before, right?
The last thing, what's the first thing you did on your phone this morning? What did you interact with? Be hypothetical. Something. Or the thing that sort of bothered you, the thing that you were like, oh, the frustrating user experience.
Trying to get my VPN to connect so I can watch the hockey game with Canadian commentary.
Trying to get your VPN to connect. Okay, what did that look like?
Well, so the frustration point was that try and log into my VPN service, because my suspicion was that it needed new updated definitions for the VPN connection, but my laptop is locked down so that I can't actually log into the VPN service.
Okay.
So it's sort of this like, oh, I can solve it by going here, but I can't go there to solve the problem.
So you've got layers.
So so then I had to switch devices and then, do all that stuff, so.
Okay. What's a good user story for that? As a Canadian hockey fan. Yeah. Absolutely.
I want my VPN to update in the background.
I want to log into my VPN so that I can watch the game using Canadian service.
Okay, so the thing that we're building is it has to do with your VPN authentication, yeah? Okay. So I think I even heard you say a rule, right? Like what were your constraints that you sort of that blocked you?
So my company issued laptop will not allow me to log into the VPN service.
Okay. And that's a laptop thing, not necessarily a VPN service.
Correct. But it is a constraint in terms of like having to log in to access those.
Okay. So then the rule could be what? What's the alternative way for accessing it?
Make the whatever you call them, definition files, publicly available and not require login.
So I can access definition files without having to log in. Okay. What would that look like? Like, what would you do then instead? If it's not logging in, it's going to what? Also, I don't mean to have you in the hot seat.
Yeah.
If anyone else has.
Yeah, I mean. It could be even having them available under a sort of like, not anonymized, but like under a URL that doesn't look to the outside world like it's associated with a VPN service.
Yeah.
Would the rule be more like your information security says we should have a locked down environment, and then the examples would.
Ooh, that's good. So there is access restriction for these files. Is the rule? Is that what you're thinking? Like
Well, his device, right,
Yeah.
has restrictions on what you can access from it, right?
Yep. So say more about what you think the rule could be.
Information security says your devices should be restricted from.
Right, because to information security, the whole premise of not being
They don't
able to
want
log
you-
into VPN is they don't want you to.
Your device is much more secure if you don't have it. Should be restricted from editing configuration.
And so is this for you from the laptop side?
Yeah, that's your device.
Yeah.
right?
And yours is maybe from the VPN side.
Right.
So that's good though that we have both, right? Because if we were building this multi-layered system, then you could attack it from both angles. You could say that. We had an example, was it that you might be able to have some kind of other access restriction to these definition files, right? Maybe it's
Right, so when I went into Google and saw the result of like, here's where to go to get those files, when I clicked the link, it asked me to log in,
Yep.
and then as soon as I log in, I get the big security thing that says you can't do that.
Yep. Whereas, how else would it have been? Would it know your IP address? No, right? Because that doesn't work. Because that's the whole part of the port, is that you need to be able to access it from the VPN.
Well, so theoretically, if there wasn't the requirement to log in, and I could just get straight from the search result that's like, here's how to get the definition files, then I could just be there and download the
Like,
files.
put them on GitHub?
Right, yeah, GitHub.
Sure.
Is exactly would be great, yeah.
So then, and that's given I'm someone who wants these files, right? Like yours is saying, why do we have to lock these files down at all,
Right.
right? So given I want to access, given,
So would an example be on this type of laptop that's locked down, try logging into the VPN service to validate that it won't let you basically won't let you access anything.
it is good to test both the sort of positive and the negative. So yeah, that's a good one to put here. So given I'm on a laptop, that's locked down, right? Then I'm prompted to log in, right? But then also the success would be, given that I'm on a laptop that's locked down. I guess this is the current state though, right?
Right.
So this is what we want to not have happen anymore.
Right.
So actually, would it be that I am not prompted to log in, right? That's what we want to build. That's the solution,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And we want to access the files by a URL, right? Probably, right? Maybe GitHub.
Yep.
Right, GitHub would be the part of like, oh, let's do the real data part of this, right? The real data is like, what is that solution? What does it look like? Is it GitHub? Like, where are we going to put these files, right? That's the actual, like, let's get someone who really knows how we're going to, what the business needs are, what the business sort of abilities are for the solution that we're going to build. How about an example for the other side, for the sort of device side that you were thinking?
Guess maybe needs to be a way on the device where you can load like an external configuration file, right? So maybe it has to be restricted from unrestricted editing, right? Like you want to be able to provide validated files.
Yeah, that reminds me of when you download software, right? Like it can be verified or not verified or
Right,
something
some
like
sort
that,
of
right? So some sort of,
Hash check, right, or something like that.
okay. So then would the rule be that there has to be a way of identifying? Is it about what the file
Verifying
is?
valid configuration. Like, I'm assuming they wouldn't want you just downloading any policy you found on the internet, right? It needs to be lined up with your company's policy.
So they can be validated as being safe or something like that, right? So, okay, so that sounds like, so this is a device one. This one sounds like maybe it also is from the VPN side of being able to have our software being used on devices that are locked down, right?
Right, I guess the device one needs to be edited so it says something like can load validated configuration files.
Yeah. So locked down devices can load validated configuration files. Does that sound right?
So verified.
Yeah, verified. And these can be validated as verified, or maybe it's identified as verified. So it sounds like we've got, this we said was VPN service. This was probably VPN service, and this would be device. So we already started to sort of have two groups of rules if we were building this sort of multi-layered architecture, which is kind of neat. We have a few minutes left. Do we want to try an example for either of those two rules? That we don't have one yet?
user provides file to the client and the client.
Or could we actually have like an example configuration file of one that's valid and one
Yeah,
that's
it's-
invalid? that
Absolutely.
could be tested against, right?
Yeah. How do we know? So the rule says it can be. Like, how would we know? What's the thing? Is it like a fingerprint?
Yeah, I imagine there would be some sort of fingerprint
Yeah.
against the file, right? Like
Yeah.
a checksum or
Yeah. And so then you would maybe want to know what valid ones are and what valid ones aren't, and have that example, right? So config file with, what does a checksum look like?
checksums like a random string.
A couple letters, isn't like letters, colon, something like that? Maybe not.
Yeah, I imagine there's different kinds. But
How's that? Good? So this one we'll say is valid, right? So that's able to be downloaded, right?
Sure.
Doesn't that look like a valid checksum?
Yeah. Best checksum ever.
I don't understand the hesitation. Is able to, or is verified, we'll say. And can be accessed from, how about laptops? Or how about the device that we're, like, how do we know which devices are locked down? Do we care about that as, this is, I guess we're the device company.
Yeah, I don't think in this case you care about the device, right? You're
Okay.
just verifying the file.
Do you maybe have a set of test devices as the VPN software company? Do you think there are some that you know in the industry that, oh, these guys, we gotta work with them? Like, right, so the Windows,
Right, you're probably different operating systems.
yeah.
Yeah, probably.
It's,
make
it's,
fun of it.
That-
it's the Internet Explorer, right? Yeah. You got a couple people who know the pains.
But those would be examples of the other rule, right? Because
Understand.
that rule talks about the device.
I think so, but I also think as if I'm making a software, I want to make sure that this valid checksum can be accessed from even the most strictest of devices, so it could be helpful to test it there, right? Just like if your rule for the business was, oh, my stuff has to be supported by IE, what was the last one that we all had to do? Remember? Can't even remember. I've like totally blocked it out. With Edge, yeah, it has to be supported by Edge. Then like you put that there, even though I'm building the software, not the device, right? So I think it could still work. We'll just say strict device 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the converse of that I heard was config file with checksum. This one, which is bad.
So here's a question, I guess, about the process.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm frustrated right now, but I can imagine if I'm in a room with my users, there's going to be a level of frustration that comes out pretty quickly when you start diving into these things. Like, how do you deal with, like, is that true? Do you feel that when you're working with clients? Like, do they start getting frustrated when you start pushing back and trying to pick apart their answers? It's like,
They
I
might.
think it's important that you do it, but I
Yeah.
also imagine that's a friction point of, like,
My real life experience is that the first couple of times you do it, it can be overwhelming, right? It's like it's a new thing, it's a new conversation. But this does surface all of the pain points, right? It can be scope negotiation, right? It can be, oh, this might not be feasible to do. Like if this is a rule, like you have to tell me how far to the left up here it needs to go. And then if we really do have to do it, then you start saying, these rules over here might not happen yet. So you do have to start having some of those like pushback and scope negotiation. But the benefit of doing them here is that then I know that I'm building the stuff that you really prioritized over here, right? Because the alternative of not having those conversations is that the frustration happens when you surface the bug in your QA sprint 2 weeks before you're supposed to launch because I didn't do the right thing, or I didn't know, right? Or I made this decision, this assumption. So yes, there is a little bit of having those conversations early, those important conversations, but you're having them early, which I think is good.
I always tell my clients that you're paying me to be really pedantic.
Yeah,
And I am going to ask all sorts of weird questions for you. And the second you surface the fact they haven't thought about it, that you kind of get annoyed because they realise they haven't thought about it. So there's a lot of social engineering at that point of smoothing that bit over.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the better I get at that.
Yeah, yeah.
As a 22-year-old engineer, I'd be terrible at that.
Yeah. That also, I think, comes with having some of, like maybe your product person, right, your PO, that's part of their job, right? Learning how to say no is I think, one of the most important things that a PO can do to support their team. So it might not be your role, if you're the engineer, your role might be, oh, I'm gonna come to this call, and I'm gonna be the one that thinks about technical feasibility, and I'm gonna be the one that asks questions and flags my assumptions, right? That's my role. And maybe someone else is a no, or the move the stickers around. Unless you raise your hand for all those. Did you raise your hand for all the roles? He's like, maybe.
Yeah.
That's all me as well.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. I honestly, we haven't experienced a lot of frustration, but I can definitely see the potential there. But I think that comes with the thing that you're talking about, not necessarily the exercise. Like this is just surfacing them, which I think is important. But I feel that. I don't have a magic answer to make clients be okay with either eliminating scope or pushing back on requirements. I wish I did. Maybe it's the angle of that is why you're paying me. Like that is the value that I'm bringing to this conversation and being comfortable saying.
I do really want to say I'm going to make you annoyed several times because it's going to make you think I'm going to be pedantic to hell because the other thing I like to tell them is you see the rainbow road through all of this. And all I see is edge cases when what happens when this happens, what happens when B happens before A, like that won't happen.
Yep.
I've watched people try to check out before putting things in a cart before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and wondering why the thing they picked isn't, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you start to also dive into the edge cases. So well, let's focus on the most common thing that's going to happen, at least for this exercise, right? Like, it gives you a space to do that. Yeah.
You said for each one of these, you have one user story at the top.
Yeah.
So you have multiple details for each story.
Well, what's that?
Multiple, like this, mapping for each story.
I would say one board like this per user story, which might mean multiple boards like per product or project that you're building, right?
What is this tool that you're using?
This tool is called Miro. It's like a digital whiteboard tool.
M-U-R-O?
What's that? Miro.
M-I-R-O.
M-I-R-O. Yep. Yep.
Like the artists.
Yep. Let me see if I can. Yeah. So by the end of our sort of project that we're working on, this Miro space will have many of these boards, like you said. Yeah. And then this is also just a code block that you could use to start writing next to it if you wanted to. Or like I said, I fed a screenshot of these into AI and had it start with that, and that was super fast and super easy. And then as you start to write more of these or sort of work with more of these yourself, then it'll become easier to sort of translate the parts that that can't yet execute. And also the further along that you get in the project, you start to sort of develop that context in your code base. So you have to write less of the PHP executable part as you go, which is nice. How do you feel? Feel like you excited to sort of try example mapping to get from conversation to know? Yeah.
Would it be possible to get the prompt that you used to turn the Miro board into the Behat?
You bet. Yeah,
it'd be really
we can do that.
interesting to see.
I'm gonna upload the slides for this, so I'll include the prompt there, aside the prompt, and I'll include a link to, I'll put just this blank frame up there as a template so that you can access it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's very good approach.